Hey everyone, welcome to Professor Long's Lectures in Anatomy and Physiology. As you guys know, we're in this COVID-19 coronavirus shutdown. I'm having to transition my face-to-face classes to online, and I'm not an online guy. So that's what these videos are for. These videos are intended for students taking my anatomy and physiology class at Del Mar College. If someone else stumbles across these or finds them helpful, great. Share them with as many people as possible. Maybe they can learn something. And if you don't like my style or don't learn from me, then, great, move on. There's plenty of others out there. But let me know one way or the other, okay? This is going to be video number 2 in the series of the digestive system videos. Last time we covered the first lecture in digestion, we covered the 4 major organic compounds: carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, nucleic acids, what their alternate names are, what enzymes break them down, what they are broken down into and absorbed into our bloodstream as. So you guys really need to know that stuff. Now today's lecture is going to be the broad overview of the digestive system. If you're in my class, y'all know I always start every system with the big picture, stepping back and looking at what is the overall function and the overall goal of the system. And then we go into the minute detail to some degree, and then we step back out and look at the big picture. I know there's further detail I could go into in some of these systems, and some people think I should, but I find that people very often do what I call information bulimia. They cram all this stuff in off a million PowerPoints, puke it out on a test, and they don't know what they learned. I was a student too, and I'm trying to do what I know helped me set the fundamental concepts really solidly, so that in the future all the details fell into place. Anyway, that's my approach, and that's what we're going to do today. As I've said before, it's like looking at the picture on the box of the puzzle to get the big picture, so that when you stumble across the detailed pieces, you know where they fit. So that's what we're going to do right now, is we're going to look at that big picture of the digestive system. So we're going to go over the 6 functions of the digestive system as according to our textbook, and we're going to plug them into the entire digestive tract. So and then the next series of videos will go into each part of the system and get into great detail. So if you're following along in my class, we're still on page 76 of the note set. We're going to do the top of page 76, and then we're going to go into some other stuff. So let's start with the functions of the digestive system. Excuse me while I slide my chair out of the way. The 6 major functions of the digestive system. So the first one, and all 6 of these, I'm going to give you some information, and we're going to use this information when we make this drawing in a little bit. So these numbers are really, really, really important to us. Okay, each number is going to correspond to a specific function, and we're going to look at that. Let me lower this just a little bit so that it's not running into all of that. So the first major function in the digestive system is ingestion. And that's just getting food into the tract, okay? It's taking stuff in. You have 2 openings, but the way the digestive system is set up is you can only cram stuff in one end if you want it to traverse through. If not, try the other end. It doesn't work that way. If you're into that, I guess. I don't know. But because of the muscle contractions of the digestive tract moving in one direction, it's going to come right out the same end. You get no nutrition. So ingestion is putting food and digestive materials into the tract at the oral cavity or at the mouth. Okay, I'm not going to write a whole bunch for ingestion because it is what it is, putting food into the tract. The second major function of the digestive tract is going to be what we call mechanical processing. Okay, now mechanical processing is the physical breakdown of food. We have to physically break things down into smaller chunks. In the last video, we were talking about the simple columnar epithelial cells lining your digestive tract and the little transport proteins they have in their membranes. When you take a big bite of a burger or, an apple, the molecules are so large that we would never be able to absorb them. They would run right through us. It would be like me swallowing this pen lid. It's going to come out like a pen lid, and nothing would be absorbed. So mechanical processing is the physical breakdown of food, the mashing it up and breaking it up into smaller chunks. Okay, so I'm going to erase this physical breakdown part, and I want to put something on here that's really important. And I can't find my eraser. Ah, there it is. Excuse me. I'm not restarting this video, so deal with it. So in mechanical processing, a couple of things are important. One of them is chewing with our teeth, grinding things up and breaking them up. There's gnashing with our tongue. Believe it or not, the next time you take a bite of something, as you chew, you'll notice that your tongue keeps moving around and mashing things up. The chewing with your teeth and the grinding would be like you taking a mortar and pestle, or a molcajete for those of us that live in South Texas, and you're mashing and grinding stuff up, like if you were trying to make flour out of dried corn, and just grinding it and mashing it into really, really fine things. Okay. The gnashing of the tongue would be like, if you wanted to make guacamole, there's a couple of ways. You could put everything in a bowl and mash it up with a mortar and pestle or a fork and things. Or you could put it all in a Ziploc bag and smash it with your hands and mush everything up. And that's more how our digestive system kind of does this stuff. And the gnashing of your teeth would be kind of like squeezing or just smashing something between your hands and smashing it up. And then the last one would be what we call segmentation. Segmentation are the churning contractions in the stomach. We call this segmentation. Your stomach literally kind of acts like your hands around that Ziploc bag. If you sat there and just squished and mushed, if you put some avocado and tomato and seasonings and onion and cilantro in a bag, and you squeeze and mush and mash and mush and mash, that would be the segmentation, the churning contractions of the stomach. So all of those things are going to be your mechanical processing, the physically just crunching, grinding, and mashing up the food so we can get it into smaller and finer particles. Okay, that leads to the next one of these, which is digestion. Digestion is the chemical breakdown of food. So as we eat, not only do we grind it up and mash it up and gnash it up, but we also have to chemically break it down with all those enzymes that we talked about. So I'm going to write several things down here, and then I'm going to have to erase a bunch of it, but I want you to keep that in mind, and we'll do this as we go through the system. We're going to come back to all of these and see where do they happen in the tract. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So for the chemical breakdown of food, there's a number of things that are secreted into the digestive tract that aid in this chemical breakdown. So water can help moisten food. It can help dissolve chemicals. It can help things kind of get broken down, simply like taking a piece of bread and dumping it in a glass of water. Eventually, it's just all going to dissolve out and get kind of mushy and soften the food. So it softens and moistens food, and it dissolves it. It can dissolve certain chemicals, like putting salt and sugar in a glass of water. It will eventually dissolve. It also moistens or softens the food so that it slides through the tract better. Okay. Then there's mucus. Mucus, as it's secreted into the digestive tract, as much as we hate to think of it, you know, your digestive tract is making boogers and they're running through your system. The mucus also can coat and lubricate things. It can coat and lubricate the walls of the digestive tract so the food slides through more easily. It also can coat some of the food that you eat and help lubricate things so that it slides through the tract. Also, another thing that mucus can do is it can provide protection against acids. One part of the digestive tract, particularly your stomach, is going to secrete a tremendous amount of acid, a very strong acid, hydrochloric acid, which is the same stuff as the really old school real bleach, not the color safe bleach you buy now. If you ever spilled some of that bleach on yourself or got a splash on your skin, it would start to itch and burn after a while. Bleach would literally dissolve you if you were soaked in enough of it. If you took a dead lizard and dropped it in a cup of old Clorox and waited a few weeks, you'd come back and there'd be some bones and some scum floating on top. It would literally dissolve the lizard. Well, that same acid would dissolve your own stomach lining and your own lining of your esophagus and intestine. It can create some problems, and we'll talk about those. So some parts of the digestive tract, if we put a thick enough coat of mucus over it, the acid can't access the skin, for example, or the lining of the tract. If I took my hand and stuck it in a bucket of bleach, it would start to eat away my skin. If I put a thick layer of Vaseline, which is sort of a synthetic kind of mucus, a very thick one, but if I covered Vaseline all over my hand and then stuck it in a bucket of acid and pulled it out, the acid would never touch my skin. So mucus has several functions here, okay? So we know the function of water, we know the function of mucus. Now, there's a few other things. There are enzymes. And enzymes literally digest large molecules, okay? The digestive enzymes are the enzymes that we talked about in the last video. There's basically 4 major classes. There's the lipases that digest lipids, the proteases and peptidases that digest proteins. We had the amylases and saccharidases that digest carbohydrates, and we had the nucleases that digest DNA and RNA, the nucleic acids. So all those enzymes we discussed are dumped into or secreted into the digestive tract at some point. Okay, so and then there are buffers. As you know, a buffer is something that usually resists changes in pH. So if I had a bucket of solution here, and I know the pH is, let's say, 7.6, and I took a whole bunch of acid and I dumped that acid into this bucket, you should see the pH start to drop. The more acid I add, the lower the pH. It would become more and more acidic. But if I continue to try to add acid in here and the pH does not change, I know that there's some kind of buffer in here that's preventing that change in pH. It's absorbing or binding up the acid. Same thing if I added some base in here, I would expect the pH to go up. If it doesn't change, then there's a buffer in there. So buffers prevent the change in pH. Now buffers can be overwhelmed. If you've done any chemistry, you've done your titrations with potassium hydroxide, and you can overwhelm the buffer and eventually you see the color changes. That's what we're talking about here. And the primary buffer, so the buffer is going to really, for the most part, it's going to neutralize acidic foods. It's going to neutralize acids in the tract. If you eat a very acidic food, you're eating pickles or things that are rich in acid, the buffers can help neutralize some of that. Also, they can help neutralize the stomach acid, and we're going to see how that happens. Your stomach is uniquely equipped or designed to handle its own acid. But if the acid comes up into the esophagus, it can eat through linings in the esophagus and cause an esophageal ulcer. That's what happens to people who are bulimics and vomit a lot, is that stomach acid eventually eats through the lining. If too much acid is making it into the small intestine, then you can get duodenal ulcers, ulcers in the duodenum, a piece of the small intestine connected to the stomach. And that's a major problem for people who hypersecrete acids. So we need buffers in the digestive tract to neutralize acids in the tract. Okay, so those are some of the main things that are going to play a big deal when we talk about the chemical digestion in the tract. Is we're going to have lots of secretions. One of them is going to be the acids and the enzymes. The acids and the enzymes do a lot of chemical breakdown, but so does the water. The water aids in the process by diluting and dissolving things. The buffers and the mucus don't necessarily play a huge role in the actual digestion itself, but they do play a big role in the next one of the functions, because in addition to digestion, we have a whole lot of secretion going on. And I really kind of jumped ahead of myself with that last list of things, because that's really what we're going to talk about here. The secretions are going to be water, they're going to be buffers, it's going to be mucus, acids, and enzymes. Okay? There's even some hormones that are secreted by the digestive tract, but they're not going to play a huge role in digestion, and we'll talk about those hormones when we get to the specific parts of the tract. But these secretions, water, we now know its function, buffers, mucus, acids, and enzymes, all play a huge role in digestion to some degree or aid the digestive process. The next major function is going to be absorption. I'm not going to write out the definition of absorption. I'll tell you what it is. You can copy it down, but absorption is simply moving the digestive contents, the nutrients, the valuable ions and things we need across the digestive lining into the bloodstream. And we talked about that in the last video, where we're absorbing everything across the digestive lining. And then finally, the last thing is going to be elimination. And really, there's kind of two things that happen here in elimination. In elimination, we're simply getting the waste and the stuff that we cannot use out of the body. Okay, it's the removal of waste and undigestible materials out of the body. So these are the 6 functions that you need to know. You should be able to write them from memory off the top of your head. So practice writing them. Ingestion, putting everything into the tract. Mechanical processing, which is the physical breakdown of food by chewing, gnashing, and segmentation. Digestion, which is the chemical breakdown of food by acids and enzymes and water. The secretion in the tract is we're secreting things like water and buffers and the mucus and the acids and the enzymes. So our cells and glands associated with the digestive tract are dumping this stuff out. Then there's absorption. Once we've broken everything down, we can absorb all the nutrients and the valuable ions and molecules and get them into the body. And then we eliminate the waste and the trash that we cannot use. Okay? So now that we know that, the second part of this video is going to be this. Okay? I'm going to erase all of this. Hopefully you have it in your notes. And then you need to find a blank space somewhere to make this drawing. And I'm going to take those 6 things. I have to erase them, I guess, to make enough room for myself. Or I'll make a little side list here. So number 1 we said was ingestion. And my penmanship's a little shoddy, but you got the idea. 2 would be mechanical processing. Physical breakdown of food. 3 would be digestion. Come on, Bob. 4 would be secretion. 5 would be absorption. And 6 would be elimination. Okay. Those are the 6 things we just did. So what I like to do for my students is try to simplify this and do this in a way that it's easy to follow these processes. Excuse me, I have to take a drink here. With all the allergies that I've had and all the lectures I've been doing, my voice is getting shot, so I have to keep something warm. So, to keep my vocal cords going. I'm going to do a drawing of the digestive tract, and I'm going to give you the parts of the digestive tract. You should know this anatomy, but I'm going to do some of the anatomy, and then I'm going to erase the labels of the anatomical structures so we can put where these happen within the digestive tract. As you know, the digestive tract is a very long, convoluted tubule that runs from the oral cavity all the way to the anus, and in the middle here it gets all twisted and folded. The small intestine alone can be somewhere between 20 and 26 feet, all folded up inside your abdomen. So I'm going to draw it in a straight line drawing. I'm going to label some of the major structures. Some of them I may leave off, but that's okay. You'll learn them in lab. So here's a picture of our head. I'm not going to draw the nasal cavity. We're not concerned with it, but this is the oral cavity. Part of the oral cavity where it splits to go to our lungs would be where the esophagus, or the pharynx is, the esophagus, the stomach. We have a really long small intestine. Then we have a large intestine. And then we have the rectum and the anus. And again, none of this is going to be drawn quite to scale, but it is somewhat. Okay? This whole structure here itself is the digestive tract. The digestive tract is also referred to as the alimentary canal. For some reason, whenever I've looked at the HESI test and the TSI or whatever the test y'all take, ATI, I've taken those tests, so I know what I need to focus on for my students. They use this term alimentary canal a whole lot. It's the digestive tract. The whole tube from beginning to end is the digestive tract or alimentary canal. There are some accessory organs that are associated with the digestive tract, and I'm going to add them in here because they play a huge role. Over here by our stomach, not too far from it, is the liver. Attached to the undersurface of the liver, on most of our models, it always looks like a little green bag. is the gallbladder. I'm going to put GB for gallbladder. And there are some tubes that come out of the liver and the gallbladder. These are going to be really important in lab to learn these tubes that eventually wrap around the small intestine and then empty into it on the other side. So it's kind of going around and hooking this way. And right next to all of that, there's an organ attached to the small intestine that actually this tube coming out of the liver and gallbladder runs through, and it fuses with the duct or the tube coming out of this organ, which is the pancreas. Of course, the spleen would be at the end of the pancreas, but we're not going to worry about that because it's not part of our digestive system. So the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas all contribute to digestion, but they're considered accessory organs or accessory structures. And the pancreas is also going to dump stuff into the small intestine at the same place that the liver and gallbladder do. They actually share the same opening, and it's two different tubes coming in from two different angles. And then we have the small intestine, the large intestine, and this. So let me label a few more pieces here. This would be the oral cavity or the buccal cavity. We have the pharynx. It's part of your digestive tract. We have the esophagus. We have the stomach. We have the pancreas, the liver, the gallbladder, and the spleen. We have the small intestine and the large intestine. Now, the small intestine, I'm actually going to divide the small intestine into 3 different regions, okay? And each section gets progressively longer. I didn't quite do that right, so let me redo this. Each piece gets even longer than the last, okay? And there's a reason we need to know all of these because we're going to go into the actual functions of these different areas, okay? So this little area right here, the first part of the small intestine that's attached to the stomach, that part that I labeled A is called the duodenum, or some people say duodenum. Tomato, I don't care how you pronounce it. But that would be the duodenum. It's only about 10 to 12 inches long, and it's attached directly to the stomach. As the digestive contents empty from the stomach, they enter the duodenum. That's also where the liver, the gallbladder, and the pancreas dump digestive contents or dump some enzymes and some buffers and some other things into the digestive tract, is at the duodenum. The second section of the small intestine is longer. It's somewhere around 8 feet long, and that structure is called the jejunum. And the jejunum is where we're going to do a lot of absorption. The longer it is, the more surface area for absorption. And then the last section of the small intestine. So these 3 areas all make up the small intestine. Okay. The last section is called the ileum. And the ileum is the longest part of the small intestine. It's somewhere around 12 feet long, give or take, depending on your height and your size and other things. But ultimately, we go from about a foot to about 8 feet to about 12 feet. So there's, on average, between 20 and 25 feet of small intestine curled up in your abdomen. Once the digestive contents pass through the sections of the small intestine, they enter into the large intestine. So this organ here is our large intestine. And in case you don't know it, the large intestine is also called the colon. They are the same thing. So if you have a colonoscopy, they take a scope and they stick it in and they go check out your colon, trying to look for colon cancer and polyps and growths and abnormalities there. The colon itself has several major sections. There's a part called the cecum. It's sort of the little pouch right attached to the small intestine. And attached to the cecum, by the way, is another accessory organ that I'm going to add onto this picture. And that accessory organ is called the appendix. The appendix is right here, sitting right by your right hip, or close to it. And that appendix actually plays a role in digestion. The appendix is attached here and can dump stuff into the digestive tract at the cecum, right where the ileum and the colon meet. From the cecum, food is going to go from about where your right hip is, up your abdominal wall here inside the large intestine. That's called the ascending colon. And then food will traverse across, called the transverse colon, and then come down over toward your left hip, called the descending colon. So we have several sections. We actually have 5 sections of the colon. There's the cecum, then there's the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon, and then we have a part where it does this funny S shape called the sigmoid colon. Sigma is the Greek letter S. And then that empties into the rectum, and then of course there's the anus. Okay. So this is your digestive tract. Okay. You should know the structures that food would pass through in correct order, from the oral cavity to the pharynx, through the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, in order, the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum, and then into the large intestine, the cecum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, and then we have the rectum and the anus. I didn't draw this anatomically. I drew it in a straight line for ease of understanding. Okay, so now, the reason I like to do this way is because I like to go through the tract and show you what's happening in each section of the tract when it comes to these things. We're simply going to plug these numbers into the different areas of the digestive tract. Now, in order to do that, I really need a lot more space and room and detail to do this. So I want you to kind of keep this big picture in mind. I'm going to end this video, and then digestion lecture number 3, we're going to take sort of the top part of this picture, enlarge it, and we're going to plug these processes in. And then we're going to go through the next section and plug these processes in and talk a little bit more detail. There'll be several other videos. We'll get into even more detail, but that's coming. Got it? Okay, so listen. I hope you learned something from this. I hope you had a little fun along the way. I hope you had as much fun as I did, because I had a blast. And if you did, great. If you didn't, I'm sorry. I was trying to be helpful. It's not for lack of effort. Anyway, review this video as much as possible. If you're in my class, fill in your note set. Actually, there's nothing to fill in. We draw this out in class normally. But fill in the worksheets that I'm going to be putting online, and try to keep up with the material, and then get ready for the next lecture. I'll see you there in a little bit. Thanks for watching.